This video explains the 3 steps in the back translation method. For each step I'll tell you what we want to achieve, how we go about it, and the traps we know to avoid. Understanding this will help you run your projects better, meaning better back translation outcomes. I'm Dennis Brown, and our company has been in the language translation business for over 20 years. I'll be covering the exact documentation you get from the process, so keep watching. First up, let's be clear what we're talking about. Back translation is a 3-step quality control method applied to a translation you've already had completed. Step 1 is to translate that completed translation back into the original language. Step 2 compares that new translation with the original text, and Step 3 reconciles any meaningful differences between the two. Yes, that first step is also called back translation, which is confusing, I know, but let's continue. Here's the back translation workflow. Now, if you want a more detailed look at this, head over to our blog article, where there's also a free ebook you can download. So let's go through the process. Step 1 is the back translation. Now, the task here is simply to produce an accurate translation. So we handle it much the same as any other translation job. It's just that in this case, the document is itself a translation, and we're working back to its original language. However, we do make sure the translator knows this is a back translation. That's so they'll produce a slightly more literal translation rather than spending time polishing their wording. And this makes the whole process more effective. Now, there are 2 things to watch out for in this step. Firstly, the person doing the back translation must be a proven, competent translator. That's because any inaccuracy or loose wording in their translation will cause problems in the next 2 steps and add unnecessary work. So be wary if you're considering doing this step in-house. Unfortunately, not all bilinguals are good translators. Secondly, we make sure the back translator wasn't the original translator and can't access those files. That's so the original document can't influence their back translation. The back translation will be a Word document which we'll send you. However, some clients do choose not to get this, as it is only a means to an end. Our second step is the comparison. Our task here is to identify differences in meaning between the original text and the back translation. These 2 won't be direct equivalents. We'd expect different ordering of ideas, vocabulary, even grammatical structures. None of this matters though. It's not form that counts, but content. We ignore the superficial differences and look for ones that matter. Technically, these can be differences in meaning, concept, function, or effect. So we systematically compare the 2 documents in small chunks of text from side-by-side hard copies. As we go, we highlight apparent or potential differences in meaning and later transfer these to a spreadsheet. If there aren't any potential issues, we confirm the translation is accurate and the process is complete. But if there are, it will be on to step 3. There are 2 main things to watch out for in this step. Firstly, identifying differences in meaning isn't always as clear-cut as it sounds. In this example, the back translation mentions medicine and storage that the original doesn't, and the original doesn't specify what is supposed to be kept away from children. But assuming it's clear from the context that the original is referring to medicine, the question is whether the text convey the same idea and have the same practical effect on the reader. I'd say they do, and this wouldn't be something I would flag. So the key to a successful comparison is being able to distinguish between differences that matter and those that don't. Secondly, this means choosing the right person for the task. That's someone who can disregard the inconsequential and hone in on the essential meaning. Linguists generally find this easier than non-linguists because they're used to dealing with different language structures and ways of expressing things. Non-linguists can struggle to put these things aside, and as always, experience counts. In this step, we produce a spreadsheet of the apparent differences. This is our potential issues report that a client can choose to receive. The third and final step is the reconciliation. The goal here is simply to make sure the final translation is accurate. Now, I'll explain shortly why the wrong focus here can undermine the whole process. So from step 2, we have a set of apparent or possible differences in meaning between the source text and the back translation. Now, the first thing we need to do is check that the back translation is accurate. If it isn't, we'll update it. But if it is, we'll need to revisit the translation to see if it has the same meaning as the source text, is clear and unambiguous, and reads well. If there's any issue, or we think the translation can be improved, we'll amend it. That'll then mean updating the back translation and repeating the compare step. However, if the translation is fine, we'll confirm this and explain why. Here's an interesting example with sign-offs to a formal letter. If you look at the 4 English versions, they express different concepts and have different vocabulary and structures. But this is exactly how you end a formal letter in these languages, and all 3 translations are the perfect wording for this context. So the translators wouldn't change anything, and they'd confirm the translations are fine and functionally equivalent to the English. The translators record the action they take on each potential issue in the spreadsheet from step 2. Then a senior translator or administrator will review the changes made and the explanations given. Again, there are 2 key things to watch out for. The biggest single threat to a successful back translation process is the wrong focus in this reconciliation step. The objective is not to end up with a back translation that's almost identical to the source document. This is not only incorrect, but is actually counterproductive. It generally leads to translators being asked to change their perfectly good translations. Bear in mind that the back translation was only ever a means to an end, a way to identify potential issues, and it's not the focus of this step. Instead, the focus here must be solely on whether the translation accurately reflects the source text. The second caution is that it's best for the review of the translation to be done by the original translator. That's because they'll be familiar with the entire text, and this may have influenced their choice of wording in the parts we're looking at. A fresh translator looking only at isolated sentences will lack that overall context and may make ill-advised changes. This step updates the spreadsheet produced in step 2, which we can extract into a separate reconciliation report. This lets clients review what we've done. And of course, we'll also send you the final translation. So that's it, the 3 steps to back translation and the keys to doing it right. Now make sure you head over to our blog article for great practical advice on managing your back translation projects. And there's a free ebook you can download. Plus, we've got another video on the pros and cons of back translation and knowing what types of projects it's best suited to. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.